over here. But here we are live. Psychedelics today. Fillmore, Reggie Harris. Reggie, how's it going today?
I'm wonderful, man. I'm getting ready to hop on a plane in a little bit to head to DC. We're going to the National Cannabis Festival, so I'm really excited for that. How are
That's
you?
awesome. Doing pretty good, finally recovered from PS25. That took a lot of energy. Uh,
Yeah,
Happy to be at home. Yeah, man. I heard the National Cannabis Festival recording you guys did. Like I say, I edited that one, and that was cool. It sounds like a really interesting event, and she seemed like a really interesting person.
yeah. So I respect Caroline a lot. When I first, for me, I separate my time in this plant medicine world based upon above ground time and underground time. And when I first kind of popped up in the above ground space, I initially met Caroline. Her name is Caroline Phillips. She is a black woman out of Washington, D.C., probably about my age, maybe a little younger. But she was helping Tim Blake in the Emerald Cup organize their Harvest Ball one year. And, the Harvest Ball is a multi-million dollar production. They hold it up in Santa Rosa, California, which is Northern California for those in a global market, kind of like the beginning of wine country. And they rent out this fairgrounds, and some of the biggest performing artists are there. Some of the biggest names in cannabis were there, and for the first time, after I did the Oakland Psychedelic Conference in 2001, everybody was paying attention to, particularly me and what Oakland Hyphae was doing. And I'm at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to operate in an above ground space. I emails and answering emails, get the fuck out of here. Administrative stuff, get the fuck out of here. I can do things to keep money or to make money, but having a budget, get the fuck out of here. I keep it all in my head, and so working with a lot of people in the beginning, and still a little bit to this point, but especially back then was very, very, very hard. And there was this woman who was very kind to me. She was very understanding. To put it in perspective, me and Daniel Shankin, and I heard somebody just yesterday referred to him as the Buddha of the space. I was so bad at answering emails that me and Daniel Shankin ended up having a falling out, a yelling back and forth that was rooted in my inability to answer emails. And shout out to Daniel. We've since put that behind us, but the way I functioned was so frustrating to a lot of people that Daniel Shankin uh I cursed me smooth out. And this woman was just very nice. And I didn't know her from anybody. She helped, hey Reggie, we need you here. Hey Reggie, we need that. Hey, remind me. Fast forward 2 years later, I'm in DC setting up my first DC conference, the National Psychedelic Conference, and I'm at the venue and I see this woman, and I'm like, "Yo, I recognize you from the Emerald Cup." And she says, "Oh yeah, I'm Caroline. Just want to remind you, and I am here because this is our go-to hotel for the National Cannabis Festival." And I'm like, "What? You run that?" "Yeah, I run that. That's my program." And right then and there, that's how the shit happened in the hallway randomly. Just bumping back into her and just praising her for being so nice. She says, "You know what? We would love for you to come out to DC because I'm from DC as well. We'd love for you to come back home to DC and kind of put on, something similar to what you're doing here in DC as a national psychedelic conference. But we want you to run the psychedelics pavilion." And so this will be the third year that she has us doing it. I feel it's an honor because yes, I leave the East Coast to come out here to kind of operate in a way where I'm free and can operate in a way that feels good to me, and to be able to go back home to DC a decade later and be able to bring the gifts that I've been able to kind of cultivate on the road, man, is awesome. And just one more thing, um, one of the good things about that podcast that she and I did was DC is it's the seat of power in this country. And so everybody there is political. If you know anything about me and my background, I'm extremely political. I worked on the two Obama campaigns. I went on two campaign trails with Bernie Sanders. And now I got my fingers crossed for Mondani in New York. But if you listen to that podcast, she gets into a lot of the politics around psychedelics and how the national politics have impacted everything all the way down to the bottom, where Trump is threatening to take over DC because it is his right. He can do that. It's a federal city, federalized city. Um, Typically, the National Cannabis Festival is held in April, but because there was like an ownership change and we didn't know where the power is going to sit, they actually had to bump it back to July, which is the reason it's happening right now. So a lot of interesting going on, a lot of interesting things going on. DC is a decriminalized city, but one thing that I'm very proud of is every time I travel to all these other decriminalized cities or even legalized cities, I feel like they don't have. Um, I feel like us coming from Oakland in particular is just kind of like bestowing um, really knowledge on how you can do things, and it's not crazy. It's not a free for all, and you can create community. So that's what I got to say about that and her. And she is. Oh, the last thing I promise. I just had to sing her praises. Um, when you look at independent events like this, last year there was 30,000 people there. There are no black people, let alone black women, who are operating at such a high level. I think she is the biggest one to do it independently and not like sell her brand to MJ Biz or something like that. So I just want to sing her praises. And anybody who is around, go. You can check my IG page out for a 20% off ticket price.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. So I guess let's reintroduce Reggie Harris and Oakland Hyphae to the Psychedelics Today team. From what I know, Reggie, you started the first kind of mushroom testing lab. Is that right, in Oakland?
I mean, I started the first mushroom testing lab, as far as I know, in the world, but definitely
In
in
the
the United
world. Yeah.
States. There was, and um, let me be clear. There was people who had the method and who could do the testing, but it wasn't happening, and nobody had the foresight to say, let's make a business of this. And it wasn't what I set out to do either, to be quite frank. Um, what the reason that I started the first testing, and it was me in a group of individuals. So I don't want to take away from the team effort. It was definitely a team effort. We had people like Tomas, we had my homegirl Emily, and a lot of other people along the way who helped. But it was just perfect timing. I was cultivating mushrooms back then, right? In 2019, I had a whole bunch of genetics I was just sitting on, and things became decriminalized here in Oakland, I decrimmed, or I started growing, and um, there's these things in Oakland called sessions where you would go and you would sell the mushrooms. And so, to survive, that's what I was doing at the time. But there was a problem. And the problem was that there was no good reliable information out about mushrooms. And to be frank, there still isn't. There's still a long way to go. But at that time, there was nothing. And so people were judging potency based upon cap size, based upon length of stem, based upon how blue it was. And so, in order for me to be able to sell these mushrooms, I wanted to kind of find a baseline for how we measure potency. And so, over a year, COVID hit. A bunch of cannabis labs went out of business, and we just got really, 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 really once in a lifetime deals. That's the reason that the reason it is difficult for people to catch up to me now is because you have to invest so much money to get where we got, and I got the equipment pennies on the dollar. And we actually bought a whole lab. I'm looking at shit right now that I've never used, but we just bought it because it came with the package, and we figured it out. I went through the sessions, and actually for the first cup that we ever did I had to pay. I paid and bought the samples from the guys just so that we could set this off. And the first test that we ever ran was a test to validate or invalidate the rumors that caps are more potent than stems. And we ran this shit and we put it out. And I remember I was so nervous because I am not a scientist. And so I'm on the scientist's ass, like, yo, let's make sure this is real. Because if it's not real, it's going to destroy my reputation. So we tripled, quadruple checked, and then we put it out, and the rest is history, man. So Hyphae Labs has now been in operation for about 5 years. We're the founders of the first mushroom cup. Now everybody has their own cup. I call them my sippy cups, because that's the little cups that the babies drink. Um, and we are the original. I got to talk a little shit, Joe. I'm sorry.
I'm okay with it. So, um, yeah. So, like, can we thank you then for knowing in part that caps aren't necessarily stronger than stems, and like, there's all that variability?
What I can say with 100% certainty is that we were the first people to run that test, and to run it a bunch of different ways so that we could actually validate that the difference is negligible. As far as the science shows, the potent ingredients, psilocybin, salicin, etc., is distributed evenly, even though sometimes you'll have more mass in a cap or you'll have more mass in a stem. When you adjust for that mass, making all things equal, it's negligible.
Interesting. I love that. And cool. So yeah, you've grown. You got like you're writing articles now. We kind of collaborate on your podcast a bit, and like how has that gone? Like you having kind of like a bigger voice here in the space, and like has it been like a cool process for you?
Yeah, I mean, again, coming from a political background, I learned a lot. Like I bring a lot. People, I like the saying, everybody is a sum total of their life experiences. And so, we bring the underground with us. We bring, the political organizing and the community organizing with us. And one of the big, big, big things that I learned, um, through the experience in politics and community organizing is that being able to get your message out the way you want to get your message out is extremely powerful. I had a client in New York, the daughter of the man who got choked out by the cops. His name is Eric Garner. I was a political director for his daughter, and I learned very quickly that if we just spoke to CNN and just let them control the narrative, that they would. I remember the first interview that she did. They said that they chopped her shit up and said that she was claiming her father's death wasn't because he was a black man in Staten Island. Um, that was the last time she ever said anything like that, and ever since then we controlled our narrative. When we wrote an endorsement um, uh, commercial for Bernie Sanders, Bernie's people brought us what they wanted us to do, and we says no. We are going to write it. We can show you where to make these shots, but we wrote. If you Google Erica Garner, Bernie Sanders, we had Bernie Sanders take a film team to the projects in her house, to the projects in fucking Brooklyn, and film a political ad. It still brings me to tears. And when she died, I was still handling her press. If you look her up on Wikipedia, it says her press set person says that they don't want to talk to any white people because they'll fuck the story up. And it was true. We had seen them fuck the story up so much. This was the last story she was ever going to be able to tell. And we needed somebody from the community who would care. So that's a long way to say I took that experience into psychedelics and I looked around and I saw what the landscape was. And at that time I didn't have a really loud voice, but I had kind of like a vision and a nice little following on Instagram. And so I partner with people like yourself. I partner with people like Double Blind and Shelby and homegirl Mary, who I call the shooter, to kind of figure out a way where we could control a narrative from a different perspective. Strict. I don't know as influential as Oakland is to the psychedelic landscape. I think that we might be the only media platform coming out of Oakland, and we're not extremely active. But when we do put shit out, the woman in Jamaica, I remember, she says, "Oh, that little boy that they thought was a toddler stomped his feet and made an earthquake." And that's the type of shit that we do. The last time that at the last MAPS conference, not this one in 2025, but 2023, Mary and I teamed up to just we did a fair interview, I think. And we interviewed a bunch of people about the cost and about accessibility. And we put it out the first day of the conference. And that shit fucking reverberated through the whole conference. That was one of our best stories at the time, but it was fair and it was true. And it came from a voice and an angle that that I think is just not represented right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love it because it's, when we started, Reggie, like we wanted to hear different voices. Like we wanted to hear, not just from the Hopkins people or who, Charlie Grove, right? Like or like the Maps core team. We wanted to hear from all sorts of people doing novel, weird, interesting shit. And, I think when I saw you guys doing like really interesting stories from Oakland, which I recognize as like, one of the first decrim or the first decrim major player city, like major waves. And then you were living it and you were there. And so like you had perspectives that people weren't able to have elsewhere. So I was like really fired up to like hear that. And I think I was connected to Hyphae first. Like I kind of
Yeah.
through this like I saw the Jewish Psychedelic Summit. I certainly don't call myself Christian or anything, but I'm like, it would be really cool to see a very similar thing happening for Christians because I want to see some waves. I wanted to see some movement there. And so I pulled together a bunch of like Christian leaders and Hyphae jumped in. I think that's how we started chatting. And that was really
Yeah.
fun
He
because
he
he was getting in
bridges
with
that
like
gap.
Episcopal priest. And then he kind of like gave you a nod and I was like, all right, Reggie's cool. Great. Let's do it.
It had to at that time. I'm still known as kind of like a firebrand, but at that time, I really was known as kind of like a firebrand. How difficult was it for you to like to kind of because we talked about partnering. We worked together for probably about a year or two before we actually says, you know what, this Hyphae Leaks is something that we want to do. How hard was that decision for you to make?
Not very, because I like to stir up shit too,
Yes,
right?
you
It's like
are.
I'm like certainly not, I like to stir up shit because like, people get stagnant. And like I think one of the purposes of this psychedelic thing is so that we don't get stagnant anymore because what we see as stagnant in America is like violence and oppression and just horrible stuff happening in the country. And that's what we can't do. Like some people think we can. But I think like realistically, if we want a healthy, vibrant, super diverse culture, like we need all hands on deck here. And psychedelics, I think, can really help with that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
man. So
So that's kind of my angle.
I do appreciate I learned a lot working with you and working with your team over the years, and appreciate the ability that you have kind of given me to find not only my voice in print, but my voice in this sort of medium, podcast medium, audio medium. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been great. And I loved when you put that out before the PS23 maps because it was like a really important conversation around accessibility. And I had some reflections recently that I'm like, like if I wasn't like part of this thing, I don't know that I could have been able to swing it at all. And I'm
One
a
hundred
white
percent
guy in
not.
Colorado.
There was no there was I know the same exact thing. If I think that maybe if I weren't as well networked as I actually am, and didn't have the standing in the community that I actually had, even if I wanted to, it wouldn't have. Even with a scholarship, it wouldn't have been able to be happen because I would have to take care of a hotel. I'd have to take care of travel. I'd have to take care of. Let's say that they waived the ticket price. Had to take care of food, and it just and um I travel with a team, and so I have to finance that, and so I am very thankful that I have kind of worked myself in the position where I add enough value and influence to the thing to have them want to work with me to make it possible. But 100%, there's no way that I would have been able to be there, and I'm certain shit, and we can get into it, but I'm certain that that's the reason that, frankly, there wasn't that many black people there. We were there, we were represented, but not in like we weren't in representative numbers. So 13% of black people represent 13-14% of the population in the United States. Um, 14% of that population at mass was not black at all, and I am willing to bet dollars to donuts that surely the cost was the biggest prohibitive factor.
Right. So Yeah, before we jump to PS25, like what was your kind of experience at the 2023 event, generally
2023.
speaking?
I mean, it was overall, it was great. I I'm trying to flash back to how what we did, but I really enjoyed working with SSDP, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and MAPS to host like a Juneteenth gathering. And everybody was there. When I say everybody, a lot of people get nervous around, doing a black centered thing or like a June centered thing. Some people think that it's just for black folks. They don't know if they should go. There was not that question at my Juneteenth party last year. Everybody, black, white, and everything in between, Muslim, Jewish, and everything in between, was there, and they all had a good time. And for me, I just remember seeing that line wrapped around the building with people waiting to get in. The price. It was a smash. I remember spending a lot more time at my table in my booth last year, talking with people. And you had a booth last year, and you probably had a booth this year. And being a person in the community with visibility, where there's 16,000 people and there's a line waiting for people to talk to you for 8 hours in a day can be a lot, but can be rewarding. Getting a chance to connect with folks that you've seen on the internet, that, okay, you live in bumfuck Maine and you did live down in bumblefuck Texas, but all of a sudden you can really get a lot of bang for your energy there. I remember that. Um, I also remember being able to put FaceTime in with some folks to kind of like set the groundwork. I remember my table last year was right across from the I don't know if it's the Denver Psychedelic Club, but whoever, decided that they wanted to do the Denver Cup. And I remember um, I didn't have great feelings about the way that they were moving because they had just outright taken the name Psilocybin Cup, which was the initial name of mine. I like to, if wherever possible, move in the spirit of collaboration. If somebody inspires me, hey, let's work together, instead of, hey, I like what you got going over there, I'm just going to take it, or I'm just going to do it. And I remember um, they had been avoiding me for quite some time. I was trying to have conversations or emailing, and somebody put our tables right across from each other. And the woman Katie she literally had to face me. And Monica Cadena, my partner in crime, or my partner in um, not crime, I don't want to call it crime, but she's been a part of every single great thing that I've done in psychedelic world. She went and tried to bridge the gap. She went over to Katie and she says, Katie, here's Reggie right there. He's Oakland Hyphae Labs, and he started the cup. And I just wanted to see if you guys could talk. And Katie said that, oh, I'm afraid to have a conversation with him. And I knew why she was afraid. You've been moving nasty, and now, like, you can't dodge this. So I didn't force the conversation. When she said she was afraid, I understood why she was afraid. I didn't do anything to make her scared. I didn't. But sometimes when you do fucked up shit, and the real life, I mean, the internet becomes real life. And if you don't have any contact with black people on a regular basis, I can understand why you will be afraid to have a conversation with me about that nasty work. And so, but that was a point of discomfort for her. We fast forwarded, and I still kept the door open. And I remember, not this past Juneteenth, but the last Juneteenth, I was on a call with them, and we were somehow talking about collaborating for the cup. Um, it still didn't happen. She wasted my time, but through these iterations, people saw kind of what happened. And from what my understanding is now, they've removed her from the leadership position of that organization. And I'm hoping that moving forward, I'm talking to the folks at Triptomics now, who started working with me first, but I'm talking with them about somehow figuring out a way where we can work first or work together. So, overall, it was great. It really kind of, in terms of the black leadership in psychedelics, I think it was phenomenal. I think that there was a way more, and I'm confused by this. I'm very curious. I think there was way more of a spirit of protest and a spirit of social justice, at least embodied in an action at the last one. This one seemed a little bit muted, and I'm interested to hear your take on it. But overall, I think it was good. I think it was good. Um, I think that a lot of folks tried to build on it. I think that Maps did a lot in terms of reflection on accessibility, to try to make it more accessible, try to offer more scholarships, try to be more flexible with deadlines and things like that. But my memory doesn't serve me as telling me that it was a waste of time or energy. I don't believe that at all.
No, no, no. I had a really good time at 23. I was just like exhausted by the end. It was so much conversation. It was like, this is gonna sound like some bullshit, but like I'll say it. Like I had a hard time leaving my table to go to the bathroom, and like even walking to the bathroom, it was hard. This 25, way easier. So there was like 12,000 people, I think, on the first one, and then or the 23 one, and I think around 8,000 maybe on this last one.
Yeah,
And like kind of what I felt, and this is kind of like what I'm hearing from most people, is like the general sentiment is that um a lot of people who weren't all that committed and or were just here for like quick money, not for like real healing and change,
yeah,
left.
yeah,
It failed out, like, money ran out, whatever it was, right? And as a result, we had a very different type of audience.
yeah,
And uh the flow of the event was weirder, but it was also kind of better in some ways. I can't believe I walked that much. But, it's like fucking wild. But yeah, like generally it felt a little less radical, but perhaps like what I was feeling too was like it felt a little less radical on account of we had a little bit more agreement,
What do you mean?
maybe.
What do you mean?
S- So like I think um like we were was George Floyd like 21, 2021?
Yes, yes, right around there. I
Right.
believe it's 21.
So like my sense is that we like kind
Yeah,
of were able to kind of integrate that a little bit, not
yeah,
all the way, obviously, but a
yeah,
little bit. And we're kind of on the other side of at least, hey, we have a lot of stuff we need to clean up, everybody. Um and so there was a sort of agreement there. I think we made some progress on some kind of reciprocity issues with indigenous folks. I still think that conversation is not being done super skillfully many places. We
yeah.
can get into that later.
Well,
Um,
okay.
if you want, we can do it now.
I so I have, and I think that I'm probably one of the few people who can say this without getting like without a knee on my without getting somebody on my ass, and somebody won't like it, but I can get it off. I've been doing events in Denver now. You were at the very second one, but I've been doing events in Denver since 2021, and um, it, I think that there is a lot of energy right now around, particularly in the indigenous community, um, in Colorado. I've worked around the country, around the world, frankly, at this point, and I've not seen the sort of energy um, around. I've not seen the energy in the psychedelic community coming from the indigenous community that I've seen in Colorado. Meaning, when I went for the very first time, you know, motherfucker was on my ass, on my ass. Are you doing this? Have you sat down and talked to that person? Have you acknowledged this person? Will this person be speaking? Oh, go sit down with this elder. And I did it all. Um, but I've never seen anything like that before that or since. And the same folks that was on my ass when I decided to come there from Oakland and start try to do what I thought I was building bridges were, interestingly enough, the same folks who jumped on stage when Rick Doblin was speaking the first year, or 2023.
Mhm.
And so there's and I get it. I do get it. If well, I do get it. If I'm if this is my if this is what I consider my indigenous culture, and I'm looking around and I don't see that many of my people, if I'm looking around and there's still enough indigenous folks for you to like bump into like actually and brown indigenous folks, because I see a lot of the blue-eyed indigeneity too, but when you can still bump around and see brown indigenous folks, when it's not that far for you to have to go to a reservation, um, I think that fight would still be in me too, because I still fight when I still get triggered and feel the way when I look around and I can see the living embodiment of injustice. So I think in that terms I get it. Um, but it's for me it's a button that I I really want to avoid because it's delicate, it's craftful. My position is I'm here to stand with you and fight with you, but my people didn't do this shit to y'all, so y'all leave me the fuck alone. And I say it just like that because I believe this. That I'm better. I'll be an ally, um, but don't be on my motherfucking neck like this is my cross to bear. This is not. We can fight together, but my people didn't do this to y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I have like this really fairly serious talk track that I want to develop around kind of the same people that kind of murdered wisdom keepers and hid everything and suppressed and enslaved and trafficked and everything. Same kind of organization stomped that same shit out in Europe just kind of 1300-ish years earlier, quite skillfully.
Yeah,
And it's a continuation of colonization. So like we're, Irish, Scottish people, like we have kind of quite the resistance to empire, kind of still today. And it's something I would really like to flesh out. Apparently there's this book. I need to read it. My old man says, don't don't go write your version of this book. You'll probably get murdered. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like that means I really want to dig in. And it's like, it's the history of kind of Jesuit order in the Catholic Church, like as really skillful kind of colonizers and erasers.
yeah.
And, the only valuable thing is like Latin and Greek and the Bible and stuff. And I'm like, yo, guys, like we got to kind of look at our whole history here and realize that we're all oppressed by these same people. And until we do that, like how do we start to repair? And it's clearly not from these power blocks that are voting to continue hiding Epstein cases, right?
That's
Those aren't the right
crazy.
people.
This is
Yeah,
crazy. What the fuck? Who would have thought, dog? I was what?
yeah, right. It's
Who
amazing.
would Tucker? Who would have thought that I would be sitting on pins and needles waiting to hear what Tucker Carlson's take is? What?
Right, right. Who knew? I can't even believe it. And like, like that's telling of our age, right? Like clearly power is out of control. And clearly it's like in a lot of cases the same power structures that, came from before year zero. And like same game plan often too. Like divide and conquer.
Yeah,
Like how are they dividing up the poor people and making us fight against each other still? And we're still like executing on their plans that they laid a long time ago. And like, so I want to, I'm all for justice. I'm all for land back. I'm all for reparations. I want to figure out like what is the skillful way to like talk about these things and like fucking actually execute, right? And but there's so much history we have to acknowledge and understand before we can kind of like get there.
that is a I had to do that, and frankly, folks might judge me for saying this, but YouTube is a really, really, really great tool. I remember living in New York. I tried my best to get history through YouTube, and if I tried to get history outside of the United States, it was oftentimes in the language of whatever country. So West Africa, it'd be in French. Now you can get. I'm diving into all sorts of African cult history, but I am very much interested in where this colonization shit started, and it did start in Europe. Now, after they've done this for so many hundreds of years, and these people are made serfs on, and they keep chopping up land, and you're basically a slave to your land because you got to keep paying the landlord. When when the Europeans figured out that they could export this shit, and all right, at least now I got a chance. I halfway understand why a lot of these people who were up underneath the thumb left and just try to do it somewhere else. But it did start there, and they perfected a lot of this shit with, like you say, the Irish, and but just people in Europe, period, the haves and the have-nots. They used religion to separate and oppress and murder people and rape people. You look at fucking Braveheart. That's like they those people they would consider them witches, and they would wipe them out. They would kill them for no reason. But after they discovered this new world, they started exporting that sort of hate and exporting that sort of insanity. And I do think that learning history, because they don't teach you about that history. We get in school, we get this snapshot where, okay, slavery happened. The Native Americans got wiped out. That's it. No, this is a continuation of and we can, I guess we get back to psychedelics, but this is a long spiritual thing that we're involved with. And I think that when we all realize what we're fighting against, instead of trying to fight for a slice of the bullshit, the status quo is in trouble.
Yeah. And first book recommendation, you can get it on audio, no problem. A People's History of the United States, which is pretty much exactly what you're not taught in school.
Yeah,
that was very important history.
Is that Zinn?
So Howard Zinn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like a good place to start for folks. And yeah, so
I do want to also say I remember listening to a podcast that you did a few days ago, maybe a few weeks ago, with Martha Busby, and he said the same thing that you were, or some of you, where you guys got into the conversation about, the difference between 2023 and 2025 is that they're the people who are here just to get money aren't there. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think it's mainly true. I remember, if you remember 2023, the biggest fucking booth was Polka Dot, and Polka Dot was nowhere to be found this year. I mean, funny enough, a few tons of mushroom chocolates got popped down in Southern California. They were all labeled Polka Dot. You don't see them no more. But there was that as a thing, and I'd be very interested. I'm not wishing this on anybody, but just I'd be very interested to see, because there was a lot of underground money being shown this year. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of, all right, the people who hung their dick out there last time, they're not there. And there was a lot of underground money that got shown this year, and I'm just interested to see if folks will pop up again next year as well.
Yeah, man, like that's kind of one of the things I was saying going into 25 was like, guys, there's going to be a lot of people trying to shop around for new people to lock up. And like, you can't just be flaunting all this stuff. You can't be so open, because this new head of the DEA is a real zealot. And like, we kind of had a lax 4 years DEA wise, relatively speaking, to what we've got right now. And I'm worried for a lot of people, because people are getting really brave right now, Reggie, and I'm sure you're kind of seeing the same thing.
Stupid, not brave. Stupid. That's I'm sorry. I can't. I disagree with your terminology of brave. It's like, this is underground shit. Right now, we're living in the era of Trump, who has directed his DOJ to not go after corruption, to not go after financial crimes. They fired most of the people in the IRS. They directed people not to do white collar crime at all. They fired all of the liberal heads of the regional departments of justices and replaced them with Trump folks. Again, whose only mandate isn't to go after crime in general, is to go after immigrants, violence, drugs, gangs. And cool. I mean, cool. I don't want to see guns out there. I'm not really pro gang, but they're just assigning gang relation to people and getting them the fuck out of here. And so if you're looking at things through the lens that everything in this country is political, hanging your nuts out there right now is fucking stupid, period. Period. We had a good run, or not we, they had a good run during the last 4 years and even previously before that. But now it's like, all right, let's be smart about this. We know that these motherfuckers don't have shit else to do but these 4 mandates. And this is when I decide I want to fucking poke my chest out and pop my head up.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. So I hope people learn. I really hope people learn. And there's some, even on the religious front, there's some really sloppy work being done by some lawyers helping people structure religious organizations. And my advice there is now you got to triangulate with your lawyers. Like, get 3 different lawyers that aren't really affiliated to get a good opinion. Because again, it's a legal opinion. It's not fact. And it doesn't mean you can't get locked up for a little bit. like just because you're operating a church and one lawyer told you you're good does not mean you couldn't spend 3+ months in prison. So like, really, really, everybody be tighter, be more
Yeah.
careful, please. I'm teaching these digital security courses now, Reggie, and I'm seeing all the holes, and it's like, it's not great.
I mean, I'm a big fan of those courses. Ever since you mentioned that's what you wanted to do, I got excited because there's for me there's just not enough information for folks out here on how to protect themselves. And I would argue that most of the people that decide to jump off the porch and jump into this on the underground side have never done anything underground in their life. And if you're 30, 35, 40, 50, and this is your first time poking your foot into the world of criminality, you have to look at things in terms of experience, not just common sense, but experience. And you're in kindergarten, you're in first grade, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And right now, this shit is real. These people are real. Jail is real. Laws are real, and examples are made. And so I would encourage anybody, tap in with Joe's class. If you're in this, you should have a lawyer or two that you deal with, because again, a lot of these lawyers, a lot of these lawyers are brand new. The first lawyer that I would not, if you, it took me maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years to come across lawyers in the psychedelic space that weren't business lawyers. When you go to these events, 9.5 times out of 10, the lawyers that you meet are going to be business lawyers. If you ask them anything about, I realized this at Remind last year. I was sitting in a group full of lawyers, and I love criminal lawyers. I love criminal lawyers, and they love me, not because I get them money, but I care about this shit. I ask them questions, then I make them. I remember I was meeting with some lawyers last year, and these are some of the best criminal attorneys in Northern California. They've seen everything on a state and federal level. They're 3 generations to collectively 150 years worth of experience. And I'm teaching these lawyers about, hey, if you leave the country, or if you're in a port of entry, leaving or coming, you lose all of your rights to privacy and to search and seizure. These people can take your phone and they can demand that you open it. They don't need any probable cause. And if you don't open it, they can seize it. They can either go try to get a warrant, or they can just hold it and make your life interesting. And these attorneys didn't know anything about it. They had to go. Where do I got this book? I do have
That's crazy.
They
the
had
psychedelic Lex.
Hold on, let me show you this. They had to go bust this book open. And this is a legal book from lawyers that they went and tagged up for me, and said, "Hey, Rich, I didn't realize that you were right, but thank you for telling me." And so, what you're saying about being connected with multiple lawyers, I think is great. But if you had to choose anything between having a relationship with a business attorney, a so-called psychedelic business attorney, or a criminal attorney, get that criminal attorney together first and figure out that business attorney later. That criminal attorney will get you so much further than this person that frankly is just trying to make money off the psychedelic world.
Yeah. All right. So seconded. And then let's jump into 25, man. Like, I had an interesting time here this year. Like, it was good. they had me doing this morning show at 8 a.m., which is a little tough, but
Ugh.
forced me to go to bed at a reasonable hour, which is
You,
lovely. Uh,
you missed
kept me out of
out.
trouble. Oh man, I bet. Like I was at the Playhouse, I saw some really fun people there, and I'm like, how do we like, how do I do this and also get up and like actually perform well in the morning? Because like on stage with the microphone, I made the joke at one point, like, how about I just don't go to sleep? Is that cool? And they're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm like, fine, fine. And I think, uh, I don't know. I had a good one. I think, there were tensions, obviously, like stuff in the world was exploding as
Yeah.
we are going into this thing. Like, I think like, America was bombing a country, declaring war on a country. I don't know. I don't really understand what happened with the Iran thing yet in a way that I can talk about it skillfully, but I'm confused. And that was happening as we're going into this conference. Like Rick made a couple insensitive comments on stage about Lebanon in his opening remarks. I have Lebanese friends, so it's like a little strange to hear. So I'm like, okay, like what's going on here? What are we doing? What is this?
Yeah.
And then I heard that you had some stressful situations like going into parties and like, some other scenarios. And like, we chatted about Carl Hart a little bit. I was glad you got a bunch of time with him. But like, at the same time as it felt like people were getting a lot out of it, I knew and I could feel some of the tension in the undercurrents.
Um. Yeah, man. I want to start by saying I got a lot out of it.
Same.
I got a lot out of it, and I also want to start by saying that I appreciate the people at Maps inviting me. I appreciate the hospitality that they showed, um, and I appreciate the efforts that were made. So that's where I'll start. And I
And I'm a
think,
huge fan of Betty and Izzy, the co-EDs of Maps right now. I'm like a
yeah,
big fan of both of them, and they've kind of really earned their stripes.
yeah, and Izzy is right here, Oakland guy. I don't know Betsy so much, but Izzy definitely is an Oakland guy who I've gotten to know over the years. We did a podcast with Izzy and the dude Kevin Baltic, who helped, who is the person in charge of putting together the actual event. And I appreciate the access and the openness and the effort and the willingness. So I just want to start there because um, I guess I learned somewhere where if you have something that might be absorbed wrong, you want to sandwich that shit. So that's the bread right there. Um, I appreciate the efforts that they put into really focusing on getting groups of Black people together and Black programming. I appreciate that. Um, Having that said, just like anything anywhere else, there are places where you could have done better. I remember at my 2024 Oakland Psychedelic Conference, Monica always runs a Sex and Psychedelics track, and we ran that track. It was all day, and there was a conversation that came up, and somebody who had survived some sexual trauma was very triggered by the conversation. It was all women that having the conversation. There was therapists up there, but I was unprepared to manage it as the person producing it. It was my responsibility, and I could have done better. And I've learned from that. I've taken feedback. I sat down with people, and I'll try to do better on how certain subjects are cared for, and how and who actually does them. Is this even my place to even be doing this shit? And so likewise, the first thing that I noticed that I mentioned earlier was that just Black people by and large just weren't there. I think Maps did a lot to try to get Black people in the room. I think that this is an issue that is larger than uh, just Maps. I think it's the psychedelic community in general, and we have to explore why. I think this is the reason that Oakland Hyphae started doing events, because when I would go to these mainstream sort of events, or other sorts of events, culturally they just weren't relevant. I thought they were boring, so I wouldn't show up. And we noticed that when I do events they are probably, I'm willing to argue, the most diverse events in the space, period. Um, but that's what I'm good at. And so there was that. Um, you know, I spoke a lot to the leadership of the black programming that Maps had going along the way. And there's a group chat with several folks that either work within Maps or are working with Maps from a community standpoint. Um, and you know that there's local black psychedelic groups right there in Denver. Blackadelics is one of them. So you have Sovereign. Carolyn used to be a part of it. Kenya now goes by Nemo. Uh, as a part of the leadership. And when I got the call from Maps folks, hey Reg, we're doing X, Y, and Z. We'd like you to help be involved. Um, the first question I asked was, have you spoken to the Blackadelics crew? Is what I call them. No, I don't know who they are. All right, cool. Let me connect y'all. And this conversation, it took place, a few weeks, maybe 2 months to 6 weeks, maybe less than that out from the event. So of course the Blackadelics folks aren't thrilled that you're calling me at the last minute. But and the conversation didn't go well. And from what I understand, all right. And I understand kind of both sides of it. If I was the folks in house with Maps, I'm like, listen, we got a short timeline. I don't have time for this. But it does for me. It feels like somebody coming to Oakland doing psychedelic conferences, and it has happened. But people coming to Oakland doing psychedelic conferences, and you don't tap in and try to work with Hyphae. It's like we're here on the ground doing this motherfucking work. We don't have to lead, but we can help move you around. We can help connect you better with folks who are right here. Um, and I think that was just a missed opportunity. And I think that I'm still trying to figure out, the origin of it. But I from my perspective, um, it's because I don't see a lot of the folks who work in house at Maps at other community events really that often. I can get them because Izzy lives right here. I can call him, hey Izzy, come. We'd like for you to speak here. And of the 3 or 4 conferences I've had, I think that Izzy has attended 2. The last 2, he spoke at 1, and that was kind of rough, kind of getting him there for reasons that I won't go into. Actually, getting to sit on stage for reasons I won't go into. But I don't see folks that work for Maps in house at any like non-Maps or non-mainstream psychedelic events. Like I'll see them at Horizons, I'll see them at Burning Man, I'll see them at Maps, I'll see them at Shakruna. But I don't see them really anywhere else. And I think that kind of, if that's true, and this could be just be my limited what I see, but I think that you develop blind spots there. And so I'll move on to the thing that I posted a bunch about that I'll end up putting my piece out about shortly. It has to come out. It can't not come out. And that's kind of just my piece is going to be about more than Juneteenth. It's going to be a review of the whole thing. But the other big critique for me is, in 2023, I ran successfully a Juneteenth event that was packed. We have the formula. I do events. I've organized this event in DC. I've organized events in Colorado, and probably been doing so longer than anybody in house at Maps. So I have these relationships, and I was very confused as to why frankly I wasn't brought in to help with this year's Juneteenth. In 2023, Maps didn't even know that they planned the thing on Juneteenth. I came to them with the other black person, Jacob Plowden at SSDP, and we says, hey, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it's on Juneteenth. We'd like to do this. And it was a smash. There was nothing, not a hiccup. Nobody had a bad time. There was nothing wrong with it. There was literally standing room only. And this year, I guess, from my understanding, there was a planning group. My man, Kupi Curie Amara was part of it. a few other folks that were outside of Maps were a part of it. Shout out to Pam, shout out to Kupi Kiri, shout out to Sia, shout out to Kevin. A lot of people in house and out of the house in Maps were part of it, all black. Um, but I've not known these folks to do events really. You sure anybody can organize an event, but experience matters. Um, and so we pull up to the event. I'm getting an award, so they're telling me, hey, Reg, we'd like to have you at this event. Um, you know, I have a personal relationship with Dr. Hart now, so I called Dr. Hart. Hey, I'd love for you to be here, meet these people. I'd love for you to see me get this award. Um, and if you meet Dr. Hart, he's not really just fucking with any and everybody. That's just period. He's just not. He don't have time for nonsense. He's all about justice and he's all about um, making sure that we treat drugs and people that do drugs fairly. Um, so we show up and there's about 10 people that come with me and more that came with my group, but they just weren't on time with us. We show up one time and the I get all my people in, and the first thing I notice is that they're searching everybody. And you had been to a bunch of parties over that weekend. I'd been to about 10 parties. I'd never seen a full body pat down of anybody. I've seen, maybe let me look in your bag, but they're not searching and pulling things out. If you're open, closed, you're good. They're searching everybody, and they're metal detectoring everybody. They pull out the wand and they go, and I'm like, if this was anything other than this thing that I committed to doing, I wouldn't even be here, because other than the airport, I don't put myself in positions where there's a lot of scrutiny like that. And granted, there was scrutiny at the actual Maps event, but I think that was warranted just because of all the feelings we saw last year. And I saw a bunch of threats to Maps staff in some group chats that I was in. So I'm not mad at that. But all things being equal, we can call the Juneteenth dinner and after party. I was very confused as to why there was that level of scrutiny. So I'm leading the group, so I get all my people to go in, and I'm last. And I don't know that I was told later that the dude had been very aggressive with people all day, and I am one to stand my ground. I was very flexible this time, but they the dude's looking through my bag, and I get there. He tells me put my hands up. I put my hands up. He says put your hands up higher. I put my hands up higher. He pats my whole body down. Then he pulls the wand out and he wands my whole body. And then the guy, and I'm doing this just so you can see, I have on a belt and jeans, and he takes his thumb and he puts his thumb up underneath my pants so that his thumb is up against my kind of pelvis area, and he pulls the pants out and he goes all the way around my waistband, and then he stops on my belt buckle and he starts doing like this. And I finally say, yo, you didn't do this to anybody else. You didn't do this to anybody else. Like, I don't understand. And he says, well, if you don't like it, you can get out of line. And I swallow my pride, A, because I'm there with Dr. Hart, and B, because I'm supposed to be getting an award. I'm like, you know what, you got it. Now just held my hands up. And at this point, I'm just locked in his eyes. I don't do anything. I don't say anything. I'm just looking at him dead in his eyes. And he finishes his search. Then he goes to my backpack and he pulls out this plastic bag, hands it to me. And then he pulls out, this is my phone charger. I keep this with me everywhere. And I had a cord in it when I was there, but he pulls out and I say, yo, that's my phone charger. And he says, you know what? Get out. You're out of here. And I'm like, what? You say, you're out of here. You can't come in. And I'm like, why? You can't come in. Don't worry about it. You can't come in. It's a black man, by the way. I think that matters. And I'm like, so you're going to do this on Juneteenth? Fine. And I tell my cousin to go in and get everybody we came with, and everybody leaves. And the organizers of the event have us waiting outside, and they ask us, they say, just wait, let us work it out. 5 minutes goes by, it's 90 degrees. We all got on long shirts. It's outside. We decided to leave and go across the street to get some food. The folks at Maps call me while I'm eating with Dr. Hart and 8 other people. They call me and they say, hey, we spoke to the manager. He wants to speak to you. So I come over and the manager tells me, hey, We're sorry this happened. We let him go. He was in the wrong, but I just want to tell you that he's been suffering from PTSD, and so we think that's why this happened. And he's like, I know it's not right, but I just want to let you know. And you're right, it's not right because we all suffer from PTSD. I've won successful lawsuits from NYPD who pulled me out the car and violated me, so I got my PTSD too. We move through the world and we control that shit, or don't become a security guard. Um, and so he says, we fired him. When you want to come back, you come back. And I came back. The new security guard was cool. He wasn't searching because I showed up with my bag right there, and he looked at me like I was crazy because I just assumed that nope, there was no more searches. They nipped that shit in the bud. But and I was unable to get my award that I showed up for. I was humiliated. And for me, it was just a waste of time. I could have been somewhere else. And I don't want to seem ungrateful that, the MAPS decided that they wanted to award me. But, the MAPS folks said it wasn't us. We didn't, that it was the venue, that wasn't us. But again, as a person who does events, I've been doing events for 5 years now. When you do a venue buyout, the security does what you tell them to. And so I have a hard time believing that somebody from the MAP side did not tell them to do that security. And if they didn't, the MAPS people were on both sides of the door. They saw these searches. They should have, in my opinion, seen it, understood what it meant both outright visually and what the implications were of this is the only event this entire weekend where there was that level of security, and it just so happened to be a mainly Black event that took place on Juneteenth. It's like, why? And that's for me the why. I'm still trying to understand the why anybody either thought that level of security needed to be had upon a bunch of Black professionals have. And even if we weren't Black professionals, this is Juneteenth dinner. It's not like we're going out clubbing, it's a Juneteenth dinner. While that level of security of scrutiny was warranted, and even if MAPS didn't ask for it, they saw it happening and allowed it to happen until it got to me. And when it got to me, for whatever reason, it came to a head, and it took all that for somebody to say, you know what, we don't need to be doing this. So that was a fucked up experience for me. And it hit extra close to home because I feel like had I just run the event or had I helped work on the event, that shit would have never happened. And I got an apology from MAPS. I think that I know that I ruffled some of the organizers the wrong way in speaking out as loudly as I have, but at the end of the day, it happened. It shouldn't have happened, and I believe it could have been avoided. And so I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but the shit didn't happen to you. It happened to me.
Yeah, dude. Like, the idea that you're apologizing for ruffling feathers is like kind of wonky, right? Like, you're the one that received some bullshit. And what did you like draw negative attention to their thing that harmed you?
I think that the idea is, this is organized by Black folks, speaking out and speaking out this way in this fashion. We probably shouldn't do it because it makes the organizers and the event look less than great. But at the end of the day, I still have the question of who greenlit this shit and why. And I don't want to see that shit happen. I sometimes discomfort is good because they'll remember it. Okay, this happened last year. Let's make sure that we are totally good. I went to 10 parties. Some of these parties were 3 floors with a lot of shit going on, and nobody's getting searched. And nobody's getting searched. And this party that's 60 people or whatever, there is an awards dinner where you got women in wheelchairs and shit. This is what you decide to do here. Just totally, it perplexes me, and how this thing could happen at this place on this day, Juneteenth, just absolutely blows my mind. Having that said, I still think that the MAPS event is a great event to go to. I'll if they have me back, in 2 years, I'll go there. I'm still happy to help them iron out some of these kinks and take on some of this load. But for me, the searching people at a Juneteenth dinner, um, focused on elevating Black people, is just the absolute wrong note to hit. It's tone deaf. It's blind, and and I hope they do better next year.
Yeah, man, for sure. Um, and I think they will. I think like there's definitely going to be some movement in a good direction. I really have like fingers crossed that Izzy will be the ED, and I think things as a result will change. Izzy's pretty aware of a lot of this stuff. And I don't know much about the event you were at particularly, but yeah, like shit's not okay, and we got to fix it. And like,
Well, tell me about this. At
yeah,
the events, at the after parties that you went to, there was security at some of them. Playhouse, there was security, but what was there anything like what I just described, or were they just trying to make sure that people paid their toll and put the wristband on and they went ahead in?
trying to think. Like I only went into like the Thursday Playhouse. I don't actually know that I went to any other nightlife. It was only because I was speaking there. Like, but like I think, what did they do to me? I think I had a super quick pat down.
Okay.
I was dressed like a ridiculous person, so like it was kind of easy, and I look like this, so I'm like, all right. But yeah, I think I got a light pat down, and like they gave some people some shit about backpacks. Um, but yeah, I didn't see anything aggressive at all, you know. Like even getting into the conference, like I carried all my stuff, like my booth stuff into the conference, not that bad. Like, I'm carrying ridiculous looking bags, and I'm like, how do you just let me in with this? Like you're being really tight with everything else. You're just gonna like kind of like, yeah, it looks plausibly like conference stuff. Go for it. I'm like, all right, great. Love that. Um, but yeah, man, nothing aggressive at all.
It's so I will also say that the I'm not a partier, but the parties, and particularly getting a chance to hang out. So after that shit happened, um, I was pretty much, I went in, grabbed the award, think I had a drink, um, and then me and a group of people, Mary Carry On, Sutton King, um, Monica, Cadena, a bunch of us, like two carloads of people. We went to another bar and just we took a bunch of MDMA between a bunch of us, and even though that shit was fucked up, we just the communing with people, like-minded people that we don't get a chance to see. We took MDMA, and even though that was a rough experience, previously, when we got out of there and we all connected, it was fun. We were dancing, we were singing, we were all praising and loving on each other, and not in a weird
Hmm.
way, but just sitting. Oh, the only person that's missing here is Charlotte. Oh, we all love each other. We're so happy that we're.
Hmm.
And so those opportunities, frankly, make the nonsense worth it, because it's just once in a lifetime opportunities for a whole bunch of leaders in the space to get together and to see each other. So again, whole thing was worth it, even factoring in the nonsense. But I'm just hoping that we can get past the nonsense next go round.
Yeah, dude, that's the hope. And I think that's one of the best functions of the conferences, right? Is like connecting with people that you just don't get to see a lot and that you work with all the time over the internet, because that's kind of our world now. And then you get to see them, and you get to see them all together. And it's beautiful, and it's so great. Like for me, that's the best part. I remember going to that recent Berkeley event, the safety summit, and I was like upset that I was even going. And I was like, wait a second, like I have a shitload of friends that are going to be there. This is going to be great. And, it was mostly good. It was still at least 70% good because I had so many friends there. And
Do you
yeah,
remember? Do you
mhm.
remember April Pride?
Yeah, it's great.
So at that event, I didn't get invited to go, but April was in town, I believe, for it, and she and I just met up in some place in Berkeley. I think it's like the women's club in Berkeley. We met there, and because so many people got drawn to that event, she and I are sitting just chatting at the women's club, and all of a sudden I see Aize pop up and Maria Mangini pop up and a handful of other people who I just know from the area. And so this is, I said this in the beginning, and I kept saying this, and a lot of people were kind of taking it the wrong way. But there's a lot of people have feelings about maps. I think our friend Carlos did a lot of damage to maps when he had a microphone. Just in terms of framing maps a certain way, and maps is not perfect. But my conversation around the event always has been, fuck what you think about maps. Fuck what you think about maps. How do you feel about these people who are going to be there? And if you answer the question, if I answer the question in those terms, I absolutely want to be there, and I absolutely want to be around those folks.
Yeah, all day. Right? Like if I could have a month with them doing some cool stuff, I would. You know, and you know, a lot of people treat Burning Man like that's a conference. I avoid that shit like the plague out there. I've been like I gave like a talk a year the last 3 years. I'm like, I'm done. Like I might go see some other people, but I'm out. I just like it's me time. If you find me, great. Kind of easy to find, but like I'm not there to talk about work at all. Please. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, I think like a lot of people, this is just their party. This whole industry. Like this is their party. This is their kind of social circle and also business. And it's like it's hard to have all that shit overlap all the time, right? Like
Yep.
you probably see it. You're like, good God, I'm so thankful to be talking to people who know nothing about this.
Well, I believe it or not, man, that's why I love my team. Because my folks can. I wasn't at the table this much this time, and when I was, it was back to back to back to back to back. I kind of stayed on the periphery and hid a little bit because that becomes it becomes a lot to me. But the conversations, the connections are valuable. Just the way my constitution is set up, I can do people in very short bursts, and then I gotta go re-energize somewhere. And so my team did a lot of the public interfacing for me, and they collected names, emails, et cetera. And then when I got back home, I had the liberty of following up, kind of like on my own schedule.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And that's kind of like I overbooked myself too. So we did like a vital meetup before and
Mm.
then after. And you know, for like 3 days. So I was like smoked and like on and just talking nonstop. And it was, you know, it's good, but it was like not that refresh I wanted and needed. Uh,
I'm
but
just
yeah.
now kind of recovering. It's like, okay, get back home, manage all the work that I neglected when I was on the road for a week. Well, actually, take a few days worth of rest, then manage the work, then catch up with the things I planned on doing, or the plans that I made while I was out there. And so that's where we're at now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, dude, we're over what we agreed to for time, and I apologize for that. But like, what else, might you want to shout out that you've got coming up? Um, somebody's asking for your Twitter too.
So my Twitter is Black Star Flower. I don't use it. I don't think that I've used it since it's been X, so it might be gone. But you can find me on Instagram at Oakland.hyphae or on Instagram at Hyphae Labs. Um, I'm working on a few things right now that I'm actually excited about. Number one, I'm planning next year's Oakland Psychedelic Conference, which the venue I'm very excited about. And this is the first time I've had this long of a runway to plan. So I'm anticipating that we knock it out the park. So that's number one. Uh, Number two, I am starting I'm restarting my Pathways to Healing at Acoma talk, where Acoma is a entheogenic church here in Oakland, that I hold monthly talks connecting people who are in the plant medicine community with therapists, or harm reductionists, things like that. People in this community doing just work that the ordinary person might not be able to connect with. Of course, we have this event in DC, the National Cannabis Festival, but I'm also partnering with one of the old partners of Cannadelic Cannadelic Miami to host a psychedelic / cannabis event in DC called Psycana. It will be on August the 29th and 30th. So coming up in a few months, but we have a really stellar lineup. So if you're interested in that, check out my IG or check out my website, oaklandhyphae.com. And then lastly, well, two more things. I've partnered with, and I haven't really announced this officially, but I've partnered with, oh, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, okay, yeah. I partnered with Danielle Nova from San Francisco Psychedelic Society um, to run a California mushroom cup. And what that will look like, we're going to host that. The actual event is going to take place at the end, or the second December in 2026. So I'm trying to give myself a little runway, but what we're going to end up doing is touring the really psychedelic minded cities in California, or places where entheogens have been decriminalized. And we're going to be doing a statewide tour. We're going to be bringing Larry Norris, the chair of Decrim Nature, along with us. And we're going to be going to these cities, talking about legislation, talking about how different ways that you could use entheogens to help your life. And also we're going to be collecting samples in person so that people don't have to throw them in the mail, because we don't want people doing risky stuff like that just to participate in an epic competition. And what a mushroom cup is if you cultivate and you want to see how your mushrooms stand up next to what's happening in the state. California is the world's, I believe, fifth or sixth largest economy. So there's a lot of opportunity here if you get your name out. My cups are the only ones that have actually created names and created careers for people. Triptomics, they came through us. Any of these other guys that have cups, they either have won my cup, or they have been jealous and they're losers and nobody knows about their shit. And so we just are able to really move the ball forward. We're attaching a $1,000 prize per category winner, and which generally is unheard of. People generally get a $30 piece of plastic that they can put on their desk, but we're giving you a chance at a career and putting some money in your pocket. And I think, and the last two things that I'm working on is I've been giving a little bit of funding to create independent Black leadership in the psychedelic world. And so we're going to be having retreats right here in Oakland, where what I've noticed is there's two types of leaderships in the psychedelic world. There's leadership that comes from, all right, I work for this organization, and so we're highly visible, and by default, we're a leader, even though we might not be tapped in with the rest of the community. And then there's the folks who have come up doing work in the community, who have gotten a lot of credibility from their peers. And so I kind of want to lean into the last one, the people who grassroots. Maybe you're not connected to a MAPS or a Shakruna, and there's nothing wrong. I'm not talking shit, but what is true is true. When you are part of a largely visible organization, a lot of your credibility comes from that organization and not necessarily from what you've done within the space. And so we want to develop independent Black leadership in the space. And finally, after I put out my Substack piece reviewing the MAPS conference, I have a piece done that I'm just waiting, because everything has to be done in order, talking about the myths around sassafras and it being a naturally occurring thing that everybody is telling you, that folks will come to you at a party and say, hey, this is natural MDMA. It is not. It is not. It is not. It's scientifically impossible. I have Stanford chemists on record. I'm about to send a sample to run through our mass spec, just so that
It's
we
like
can.
When people call it sass.
Yeah,
calling it natural.
They call
That's
it sass.
ridiculous.
It's not natural. But
That's ridiculous.
If you talk to people, they think that it's not. It's not. It's chemically impossible for sassafras root bark oil to be consumed in the concentration that you need to consume it in to be psychoactive without it being poisonous. And so you will kill yourself or severely hurt yourself. And so I think that people who are quote unquote people who love the natural shit and they're consuming sass, that shit ain't natural.
Yeah. I'm still gonna eat it, but I'm not caring about it being natural or not.
I like it.
Yeah. So right on, man. So what's your website? Where can people follow your Substack too?
So Oakland Hyphae, HYPHAE.com is where you can type that in and get the website. And then if you go to Substack and just type in Hyphae, HYPHAE leaks, LEAKS. It's a nod to Julian Assange. So Hyphae leaks. Also, I'm glad that the man is finally free. But you can get to Hyphae leaks through Substack. And I like Substack because Substack lets me post and say whatever I want, and they're not taking me down. They're not censoring me. You'll be able to find me there today, tomorrow, and hopefully in years to come.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Reggie Harris, thanks so much for being here, man. Let's chat backstage for a minute.
Okay.